immediately in space. Just like that. And when I'm in space, I still was aware that I existed. My consciousness was still aware that it still existed. You know, I had no form, no body. I was just part of everything, just witnessing. I was just part of everything.
Hi, everybody. It's your girl E, and this is another episode of Vision Rebirth, a podcast where we explore life changing stories of near death experiences, out of body experiences, divine dreams, meditations, and encounters with higher beings. Today, we have a special guest. He's the author of the book, The Second Time Around, a memoir about a life, a death, and a second chance. We have Jay Martin. How you feeling today?
I am well. Thank you for inviting me. I am very grateful for that and humbled by it. Appreciate you.
For sure. Now, you're a miracle walking. You had like 26 strokes in a coma. Like you literally came from death.
Yeah.
And now you're walking, talking and able to live a regular life after doctors said that even if you came back, it wasn't even going to be like possible that you go back to the life that you're living now. Like, first of all, how does that even feel to like be just like regularly living life after what you came from?
There's a correction. I'm not so much as regularly living life, but
Okay.
they pretty much told me that, not even pretty much, because I asked them, will I be able to do certain things again? They said no. They just said no. They said you will never become 100% again. Say, but you'll be well enough to keep going. So it was a shock, but it was just one of those things where I was like, okay, we'll see. And now it's a roller coaster. But I'm still grateful to
Right.
be here. It could be worse, right?
Right. It could definitely be worse.
Hmm.
And so I guess I want to start kind of from the beginning because to me, when I heard your story, I almost just heard like a black man that was just holding on to a lot of grief, a lot of a lot of things that was distressing you, and you just were almost like, just going through the motions of life and keeping going. So before I even talk about the illnesses that you had, I want to talk about sort of just how it came about because I'm curious if you think that a lot of the grief that you were going through, a lot of the sort of anxiety that you were going through, like did that do you think at least did that cause like later some of the illnesses that you started to get, the lupus, the pulmonary embolism, and later the heart attack?
Yeah, I do to an extent because as I probably didn't tell you, but some people know. But I guess throughout my life, there was, quite a bit happening, especially in the inner city of South Chicago,
Mm.
Inglewood and
Yeah.
Chicago. So experiencing all those things, I usually kept, I want to say, modest to an extent. When stuff happens or whatnot, sometimes it just roll off my shoulder, or if it happened, I was good at hiding it, to where nobody could see it. So when I moved here to Columbus, Ohio, yeah, all those things that happened beforehand in Chicago was the reason I moved here. Thought maybe it was going to be a little milder, for my kids and myself and everything, and I can just keep it moving. But it was like, as soon as I made it here, of course, I had to find a job. Then, I was having issues with the mother of my children. And then we had a grandmother passed. That's probably the same year. Then another passing the following year. So it's like they were coming and coming and coming. And when I started working for Coke, um, I just I dove into my job. You know what I'm saying? My job was my escape, from everything that was happening. So I didn't really have time to, or I didn't really give my time myself enough time to grieve from all the losses and everything that I was going through. It was just, okay, it happened, keep it moving, and I was starting to, I was feeling sick every now and then, but I didn't think anything of it because everybody gets sick,
Right.
you know.
Right.
But then when I found out about around 2005, when I found out I had lupus, and then they said that some of the things that come with lupus, I was like, oh, okay. And that's how I approached everything they told me. Everything they told me was like, all right, keep moving, keep working.
Man. Man.
So with that lupus, it kind of made sense where I wasn't feeling too hot a lot of times. But again, it was like every year there was a passing. This was happening, that would happen. Paternity issues. It was just so much. And I think that with all that stuff that I was holding in, it did contribute to my anxiety, you know, and it contributed to you know, depression, you know, um, and that's why I turned to meditation, you know, because
Okay. So you started meditating a little bit to handle all these stresses
oh
that were
yeah,
happening for you.
oh yeah, first I didn't know about meditation, because when I was younger, I kind of grew up in the church, my mom and everything, like most black people, especially
Right.
churches.
Yeah.
So I kind of, I didn't know about meditation. I just knew about struggling as black people. You're living, you're keeping it moving, stuff like that. But I read this book. I was at work one day, and sometimes work got boring. I picked up this book because I heard, like, I think it was George Harrison from the Beatles mention it, called Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda, a guru from India. So I was curious because I was going through so much, and I picked up the book and I started reading it, and I was like, huh, maybe I should try this. It can maybe keep me grounded or keep me together, so I won't choke anybody. While I'm
Right. Yeah.
going through this.
Yeah.
So I took up the meditation. It was hard at first, like most people, they say their mind always racing and stuff like that, or falling asleep. It took me about, it started off 3 minutes here, had to get up 5 minutes here, but gradually I kept going and it helped because
Yeah.
I needed it. It helped.
Wow. So at least you were doing something to sort of, because I can imagine that that's a lot.
Mhm.
Like everything that you were carrying and
Yeah,
still taking care of kids and relationships, like that's a lot. But so I want to set up you having this heart attack because even with, your meditation still trying to handle it wasn't, you needed, I don't know, I guess you needed more. I think you needed more than just some meditation. You sound like you needed to talk about it
oh
in
yeah,
some way,
oh, to say
right?
the least.
So you still end up having like this heart attack. Can you set up like the sort of maybe like the day that you had the heart attack and kind of what was going on
Sure,
before it happened?
sure. Of course, I didn't really, think that I would have a heart attack. You saw movies and stuff about people having a heart attack and everything, but a few years prior, I was diagnosed with a pulmonary embolism, blood clot
Mm-hmm.
in my lung.
Mm,
Um, come 2015, early 2016, that one blood clot turned to three blood clots.
mm.
You know,
And you were still just like living life regular.
I
Like,
was still going. I was still
man, oh
going.
man.
But I was, don't get me wrong, though, I was still going, but I was sick a lot, you know?
Yeah.
Like I say, I still had the anxiety, even though I was meditating more, I still had the anxiety,
Yeah.
and I was going to the hospital almost every day because I was having an anxiety attack every day, even when
Oh
I
my
was at work,
gosh.
you
Yeah.
know? So when, when it happened, I didn't even know what happened, you know?
Mm,
I didn't because, I'm at work. I worked for Coca Cola for almost 20 years. I was coming in, from work that eve, like the evening of the 17th, August 17th, 2016. I didn't think anything of it. Even the fact that the rheumatologist told me that if I didn't take care of the blood clot and take this medicine, it could be fatal.
right.
When you hear fatal, you be like, okay, I just keep working. I'm not gonna worry about
I
that.
was about to say, no, you hear fatal and you said I would just keep working. I don't
Hard
think
headed.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah. Because if I hear fatal, that means, oh, like
right,
I gotta stop something.
right. So like God was like, okay, I keep sending these people towards you. Everybody telling you to chill out.
Right,
Even the
right,
word fatal didn't work.
right.
So I came here for work one evening. Um, just called my mom and my friend. Just called them before I turned in. It was the evening and everything. And got off last thing I remember was talking to my buddy. Next thing you know, I wake up in the hospital. You know,
Mm.
I did
And you
not.
woke up in the hospital how many days later? That's the next thing you remember in terms of the physical side.
Yeah, I believe I woke in the hospital about almost a week later. Yeah,
Jesus.
yeah. And I didn't know what happened because I'm lying up in the hospital and I got wires and tubes and everything connected to me, breathing machine and everything. And I didn't know what. So I looked over, to, side of my bed and I saw my mom and some family members and a doctor. I was a little shocked a little bit because my mom and I know usually they never came up to Columbus, Ohio. You know what I'm
Right,
saying?
right.
So I see her and I do see this glow around. It's like a aura around it, but I end up finding out that that was the entity of love, but I'll get into that. But the doctors, and they was like, Jay, do you know where you are? I couldn't talk and everything. They said, you're in a hospital. They said, you had a heart attack. We brought you back. You're back now, but you had a heart attack. You left us. You know, After that, it was just nothing. Just went back. I guess they just went back out, you know?
You said after that, then you just went back out?
Yeah, I just went back out. I guess closed my eyes, and next thing you know, I'm open up back and open back up my eyes, and just random things happening. This procedure getting done, that procedure, seeing other family members. Seeing my buddy, my best friend in Chicago. He has MS, and him and his wife and the kids they had drove all the way up to Columbus, Ohio. And when I opened my eyes, I saw them at the foot of my bed and my kids and their kids at the foot of my bed. And his wife standing beside my bed holding my hand. And she's saying, if you can hear me hold my hand, you squeeze my hand. I remember squeezing her hand. I remember
Yeah.
seeing everybody at the foot of my bed. But then after that, it was out again. I think most of the time while I was in there, it was in, out, in, out.
Yeah, it sounds like you were going like in and out for like what, like a 2 week period, 2 to 3 week period,
Apparently it was like, I want to say month period.
a month period,
Yeah,
just
oh,
going in
month
and out.
period. Yeah, in and out,
And
and
when you say in and out, you mean like in and out of like this world, or just consciously you were just
unconscious.
unconscious?
Yeah, just consciously,
Okay.
probably sleep if that's what they call it, whatnot.
Okay.
And the doctor, they told my family and everything what happened. So the story goes, they said that I drove myself to the hospital, parked my car. As soon as I walked through the emergency room doors, I immediately collapsed and went to cardiac arrest. Yeah, then they called a cold blue, came resuscitated me. Then I coded again. Then they resuscitated me again, put a stent in my heart, and then I coded again. I just kept going out, and they stabilized me enough to fly me to the nearest hospital, which is Riverside Hospital. So that was the only way I knew that it was a heart attack because they told me I had a heart attack. And then they told me I had a lot of strokes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Now you don't remember driving to the hospital and turning yourself into like the emergency room. Like, you don't remember none of that.
I don't remember any of it.
The last part you remember is you were just at work and you called your friend.
I
That
was at
was
home, right? At home calling my friend. That was the last thing I remember.
wow. What did your friend say that you were saying?
Well, I believe what did he say? I believe they just, I don't even remember what he told me that we talked about. But I know I do remember because I always tell everybody that I love them, and I speak love a lot. Tell my mom I love them, my friends, I love them to everybody. So that what I would assume was the last thing that I said to him was I love you, you know.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it was kind of an irony type thing to say I love you to right the day or the right before everything happens.
Right. Right. Okay. So now I want to hear more so what was happening with you, like internally, spiritually,
Whew.
when this period where you're out of it. Like what was where were you actually at?
Like Will Smith says, "Are you sure y'all boys want to ride this train?"
Oh man.
Well, when it was happening again, I didn't know anything was happening.
Yeah.
I had no clue. Um, but I remember I remember I was going that walk like going down a hall. It was like a tunnel, so to speak. And the tunnel was like oval, and it was amber, and there were like hands or people hands reaching out, just reaching up for me. It's almost like they were like trying to get my attention or asking for help, you know.
Interesting.
So when I got to the end of the tunnel, I noticed myself just going down the highway, and the highway is right there by the hospital. The hospital is on the highway, you know,
When you say, so you were going down the highway, like
just floating,
just floating,
just
like
going.
floating above the highway.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
And I was just, and it was gloomy outside. It was dark, and the irony again, it was the middle of the night when everything happened. It was like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So as I go down the highway and it's gloomy, I get to just immediately to like it's a structure here in Columbus called the Brewery District, and it was this fountain that sits right in front of a Kroger. So I saw the fountain. Then all of a sudden, after I see the fountain, I'm immediately in space. Just like that. And when I'm in space, I still was aware that I existed. My consciousness was still aware that I was still existing. You know, I had no form, no body. I was just part of everything, just witnessing. I was just part of everything.
And you knew that you were you still, right?
Yeah, I knew I was still me. My consciousness was still aware that I was still me, that I still existed.
And when you said you were part of everything, like, can you just explain that a little bit and sort of like the witnessing aspect of things?
Yeah, it's like you say, like let's say like water,
Okay.
a drop of a bucket of water, and you get that one drop. As soon as you put that drop in the water in the bucket, it's part of the water. That drop do not, you know, classify itself as being separate from the water because now it's
Mm,
part of the water and it's
yeah.
acknowledged as part of the water. And that's the way it was with my consciousness. I knew I was just
Interesting.
part of everything, you know, and while I'm there and knowing that I was just still existing, I saw like this planet. And most people that I talked to in the beginning, when I first started telling my story, they thought that maybe it was the Earth. And I said, I can't clarify that it was the Earth or not, but I know it was a planet and it was at my footstool. It was a bit away, but I could still see it. And there was this energy protruding from the planet in the form of a tree. It wasn't going around, but it was coming out just like a tree. The trunk, and going through the planet and etc. And the energy was just going in and out, was just flowing in and out, throughout this tree,
Interesting.
through the planet. So I saw it was pretty cool. I had no doubt, no fear, no anger, no concern or anything. Not thinking about breathing or anything. You don't need all that only when you in the physical body, you know. So I looked to my left and I saw like a swirl of stars, almost looked like a tunnel or something like that, or um, like a yeah, or like a vortex. It was like a swirl of stars. And it wasn't until years later that I was just, just surfing the web and I saw the picture and I was like, that's what I saw. And it come to find out that it said it was the Andromeda galaxy.
Right, right.
So
Wow.
I
Wow.
saw it, and again, I wasn't afraid or anything. I just saw it, just witnessed it, saw the planet, witnessed the thing, and I heard my name being called. I don't know where it came from, but I heard my name being called while I'm still witnessing everything. And then after I heard my name calling, it was just I don't remember anything else. It was
And
just like
then
I was just being.
and then after that, the next thing you were That's when like you were in the hospital again.
Yeah, after that, I don't know what the time frame after me experiencing that. I'm assuming
Mm-hmm.
that the time frame was when everything was happening.
Yeah.
But the next thing I know, witness, remember after that is just just my in and out of the consciousness at the hospital and the observing things and seeing things. And this may sound morbid, but I was at peace, and it was the best rest I've ever had in my life.
I'm about to say you almost sound you got what you needed at that point because you wasn't sitting down when God was giving you the signs that
Yeah,
hey sit down, and
yeah.
now it's like no sit down.
Right,
Like,
exactly. It's like he was like, "Okay, I told you to sit them. I sit them. Okay, now it's me and you. Come on up here. Let's have a conversation."
whole time you needed a nap.
You know
That's
what I'm
crazy.
saying? He said, like me and you gonna talk. We gonna leave your body down there like it's supposed to be for a minute, but me and you gonna talk." And my guy and my brother, best friend, he asked me. He was like, and other people asked me, said, "Did he say anything? Did you talk to anyone? You remember a conversation?" And I said, honestly, it was everything that was said to me. It's almost like you talking to yourself. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
You don't need to put words to it. You don't need to try to figure out what it means. It's just you just there. So
yeah.
everything that was coming to me was almost like natural. Everything that was saying to me was natural, and that's how I found out about love. Yeah, that's how I found and experienced and found out that love was a living entity.
Now break that down. Love is a living entity. Like what do you mean? Like what is that? Then what is
Yeah.
love then? Like what is love?
Remember earlier when I told you that I saw this aura, this like glow around my family and everything?
Yeah.
That was love, you know. And when I say it's an entity, love is just like it's part of the creator. You know how they got the Trinity, and the Holy Spirit and everything
Yeah.
can exist in all places at all times. Love is the same thing. It was here at the beginning of creation, and it still exists. And it can inhabit anytime it wants, inhabit anyone. And it's just one of those things like where we have the free will thing. You have to let it in. You have to accept it, but it's still there. It doesn't go anywhere. That entity.
How can you accept it though? Like how can people sort of, I guess, conjure love or get that feeling that you were getting?
Well, that the way you accept it is just by how they say it was something in the scripture where it says that how can you say you love the Father? How can you say you hate your brother who you see every day, but you love your father who you have never seen? If that sounds
Mm.
familiar. It's the
Yeah.
same way. And love your brother as you will love yourself. The same thing. So when you love someone or when you showing love or let that love come through your body, inhabit you, you want the best for everyone. You want everyone to succeed. You want people to be alive. You want them to be safe. You want them, to be better. You feel for them as you would feel for yourself. That love that's work you accepted love with you when you feel that way about another person and even about yourself. Even the earth, the celestial bodies, the sun, everything they do is because of love. They do love. That's the reason they do it. They don't do it because it's like a job. They do it because they love what they do. They love their existence. They love giving life. They love what they say, recycling life. They do everything they do out of love. So you accept love by just living and treating people the way you want to be treated and treating people with you want them with wanting them to exceed and you want the best of them. Just accepting that into your life. That's how that works.
Now, do you still see this aura at when you see your mom and your family and everything?
Nowadays, I don't really see the aura, but I know it's still there because it
Okay.
never leaves because of how I feel every day, because it's not love is not so much, it's not a word, it's not an emotion and stuff because emotions, everything is tied to being a human.
Yeah.
And when I was
Okay.
in that other realm or whatnot, I knew love. That's how I knew love that it still existed, and I was not a human. I was not in
Yeah.
human form. I was aware that it was still there. So love, it has nothing to do with your words. It has nothing to do with how you feel. It's, it's almost like your spirit driving this body. you know, your body is just like the car and your spirit is the driver. Love is the same way. It's just riding with you.
I think it's interesting that, in this body, like we do feel like a multitude of emotions, right?
Hmm.
But when you said that you left the body, you didn't feel anything, but you still felt
I
love.
still knew that. Yeah,
You
I
still
still
knew.
had that. I still observed that. Is it being? I still acknowledged who or what love was, if that makes sense. I didn't have to have emotions to know or be familiar with. Is that the word I'm looking for? Acknowledge, acknowledging love. Yeah, I didn't need this body to do that. Even I know people. Some
But you need this body to acknowledge the other stuff. Is like
you
you need this body to acknowledge, like, anger and, all the other emotions that come with being human.
well, you have to remember in the beginning they say, God loved or the angel hated and stuff like that. It was since the beginning. The body is just a vessel. It's a vessel to experience it. It's a vessel to show it. Because if I told you about love,
Okay.
you probably wouldn't understand if I tried to tell you about it. You have to actually
Yeah.
experience it. It can still exist when it's not in his body. It still exists, but you having this
Oh,
body, it gives you like a tool to share it, a tool to introduce it to others. That's just like, there's a principal at that school, but when you go to the school, you meet the principal. You
okay.
know it exists.
Yeah.
So your body is just a tool. It's
It
only
is
temporary
interesting.
too.
Now, did you ever get any knowledge or insight onto like what your experience meant, like maybe what that tree meant, or what these things meant, what it was symbolizing?
Well, I didn't. I never knew what it meant. I never even knew why it happened. I know the physical reason, the heart attack and everything, but I never knew why, because I always felt that I was a good person. I always, had love for people, whether I knew them or not. And I sometimes had wondered, it was like, why did this happen to me? And I never really gathered why. Every day I pray, every day I ask for wisdom, every day I ask, just reveal to me, just help me understand, you know,
Right.
because it was boggling to me because when what happened to me, people, you hear stories of people who make these transitions, they say they, passed away on the table, for a few minutes or something like that, or even some people for a few seconds. And I had asked myself, I'm like, it's only been a few cases. I don't even remember if there was any cases. I'm like, but mine was 24 hours.
Yeah,
You,
yeah.
you kept me for a whole day in man's time, only to let me come back and do what?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What is it that I meant to do? And I gathered thus far, I don't have it all. I'm still figuring out. I gathered for the most part is to inspire others, to don't give up, to stay diligent, and to let people know that no one really dies. You make that transition, you don't die. Your body, that part that's driving that body, it leaves that body, but it goes back to its source and it's forever. You never really die, you know. And I know a lot of elderly and a lot of people who were making those, about to make those transitions, they were afraid. A lot of people were afraid because they didn't know what to expect.
Yeah,
They were saying, okay, what, is it going to be dark or is it going to be hell? The people hear
yeah.
about, is it going to be this, and that, and they don't know what to expect. And my story and what happened to me was, I believe it was proof to show them that you don't really die and there's nothing to worry about because concern and all that stuff, you won't be concerned. when you make that transition. Like I said, all emotions and fear and all that stuff is associated with the body. And when you leave this body, you go back to your original state where you don't need emotions,
Mm-hmm.
and there's nothing to
Go
be
back to
afraid
the
of.
water. You go back to
Yep. You go back to that
being the
water. You go back
yeah.
to that source, and what better feeling than to have than to go back to your source.
Mm.
I loved it. I mean, I came back. I didn't have a care in the world. you know,
Now let's talk about you coming back because you came back essentially to a body that you had to recover.
yeah, yeah.
You
My
like where did you keep this same energy like in your healing journey?
well, it's funny when my grandmother had came up here too when I was in the hospital, and my grandma don't really go anywhere. She's of an age. And when I was getting things done, they had to take like a tube that was in my throat, like on the side. They had to take it out. And they asked me if I wanted any pain medicine. And I said, no. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just here. And my grandmother asked me something, and I said, yeah. I said, I think I said, I'm eating for two. She was like, what does that mean? I said, I was like, you know what? After she told me I said that, I was like, huh, I don't know. However, it felt like that when I came back, it felt like this body was new. It felt like everything was new. It's almost as if I was seeing, witnessing everything for the first time. You know, I went outside after I finally left the hospital. The trees, the sky, the buses, airplanes, everything looked weird. I had never seen it before. It's as if my spirit. It's almost like something, another thing or entity came back with the spirit that was originally because I was like a child. I was fascinated just by everything. I I was just here. I was cool. you know.
It's funny because I think that's how we're supposed to be here
hmm
because, like you said, we're here to experience these things. And the reason that we're here in this body is to experience because without this body, we can't.
Yeah.
And I think we lose that memory or that because I
Yeah.
think initially when we come here I think we're excited like we're like oh I can't wait to come to earth and do all this stuff and but when we get here we forget that like oh like this isn't really who I am for
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. My youngest daughter is 5. She just turned 5. And at first, we didn't even know I could have children after everything that happened. I had
Right.
already had 4 children. They're
Wow.
adults now. And we didn't even know it could happen. So when she came, first, my wife would ask me, because she's my wife now, she's my girlfriend then.
Yeah.
And we had only started dating like several months before that happened. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And she was there.
Wow.
She never left.
Wow.
Uh, but my daughter, when she was born, it was like this innocence, this purity that I was familiar with, because in a sense, I was kind of still there. I was still in this pure form. I was still experiencing and looking at life as, how they say children are quote unquote naive when they're babies and stuff.
Yeah.
They see something that they don't understand, they start crying and that's where I felt. So I kind of had this kindred thing with my daughter, not just because she was my daughter, it was because she was new and just came from a place that I, not like a lot of people don't, just came from the same place. So we kind of had something in common.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
We kind of had something in common. And I felt that innocence. I felt that familiarity, that unconditional love. I felt it. So she was almost like a reminder, of where I had just been, and it's a good feeling. It's a good feeling until you start to observe man and this world and the actions that man take. You start to see those things. You're curious at the first time, at first, but then you're like, that just doesn't. It doesn't mesh with where I just came from. It doesn't say peace. It doesn't say love. It doesn't say any of that. What is happening? What is going on? And I was seeing hate. I was seeing, it was around the time of the election too. I was seeing dissent. I was seeing tears. I was seeing sadness. I was seeing all these things. And I started to feel that, you know, I started to feel that. And it was saddening. I started to feel that. But at the sense, again, it was new for
Yeah.
me to see it, but it just wasn't a good thing. It wasn't familiar with being on that other side. This was all human stuff, you know.
It sounds, you know what, it sounds heavy too. Like, because when you even talk about being on the other side and even the entity of love, it's very light. It's very like, it just
Mhm.
is.
Yeah,
But when you talk about the other part of being human, that sounds like heavy. And it's just like
it
almost
is.
like a burden.
It is. It can be. I have. You know, I have because of everything I have. I'm what they consider handicapped now,
Okay.
and me and my brother, we used to dance. By the way, when we were teenagers, and now that he has MS and everything that happened to me, we say that this is our new normal, and we accept that,
Yeah.
and being here on this earth and being here is the handicap. It's the handicap that most people, everybody experience. This is the handicap. You're falling, you're learning, you're experiencing, you're feeling all these emotions, you're feeling all this stuff. This is the handicap, because when I came back, when I regained my consciousness, it was like, oh my gosh, it's like, it's almost like I was waking up. It's almost like this was a dream.
Okay.
This almost like this was
Huh.
the dream, and where I was the actual awakening. But
Mm.
when I came to this world, it's like this was the dream. And seeing some of the stuff that people was doing, it was borderline nightmarish.
Mm.
It was borderline nightmarish. Yeah, it's been a challenge. It's been a challenge. On, like I said, this body and this life is the handicap. The things that we have, me and my brother, we always say, "Greater is He who is that is within me."
Mm.
We still here, you know.
So how do you face things now versus before? Like, because before it almost sounds like you were holding everything in, you were kind of in that, man vibe of, I'm just a protector and provider and that's it, I don't feel nothing, I don't,
Called
that's it.
it.
Like, how do you function now in life, knowing, everything you know now?
Well, I want to say easier and not much on my shoulder anymore because I know what it is. You know,
What is it? What is it?
it's temporary. It's temporary. It's not something that, how they say, taking things too seriously.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to. It's like, why hold on to something that's only here temporary? And it's like, why get mad? What's to get upset about? I mean, there's so much disappointment around you, but it was just like it wasn't heavy anymore. It
Yeah.
wasn't to the point to where I had to hold anything in. I don't know. I can't explain it, but it was like, it came
Yeah.
and it just went the other way. You know what I'm saying? And I was
Yeah.
just calm, and I knew that the thing I did know was to always tell people about love and the importance of love, and to know that it kind of made it hard to an extent, hard to hate anyone, because that you all come from that same body of water, and for me to say I hate somebody would be the same as me saying I hate myself.
Right.
You
Mm.
know, I would be remiss. So knowing that, I know not to say I hate anybody. I love everybody because we all part from the same place. I love you.
Yeah.
I love you endlessly. I love you. Some of the things you may do, those are actions of humans and whatnot. However, it still doesn't negate the fact that I love you. Doesn't mean I have to agree with everything that you do. Some of it is bad, but I still love you because I still want the best for you. I still want you to get better. I still want you to hug. I still want you to share people. I still want you to do all these things that's associated with letting love guide your life. So, knowing that, yeah, I still tell everybody. I tell even you should see how strangers look at me when I tell them I love them. They're like, "What? You don't know me,"
Right,
you
right,
know.
right,
But
right.
I tell them, I said, but I do.
Yeah,
In the flesh, this is all new, it's all temporary. It's basically like you sleep, but
yeah.
when we awake, I know you, I know
Mm,
me, I know we,
mm.
you know.
That's beautiful. My last, it's sort of a question, but I really want you to, if you could say something to men that were going through what you were going through in terms of that grief, that anxiety, that depression, that just that burden of, being the man at all times.
Hmm.
And, because a lot of men don't express, that they're feeling these things because, because you're men and it's like a man don't have feelings, men just robots. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, can you just say something to the men that's going through that like right now?
It's okay. It is okay to stop, slow down. It's okay to love. Being strong does not mean that you have to have on a mean, mad face or work till you die, to take care of your family. Your family needs love more than this temporary thing of money or a temporary thing of a home and everything. It's good to give them that, but you have to be alive to give them that, you know. And if you love yourself like you say you love yourself, you will not put yourself in harm's way intentionally. And by taking on so much heaviness and so much pain and so much grief and everything, you're hurting yourself. You're not showing yourself that you love yourself. You're actually doing a disservice to your family as opposed to the service you think you're doing. You're doing a disservice for them because if you keep at that path, if you keep on that path, if you keep holding in things, if you don't find a way to let it loose without harming somebody, it will consume you. It will consume you, not just emotionally or spiritually, it will consume you physically. And again, your family will pay the price. When somebody say sit down and create a sin, someone to tell you to relax, listen, because it's not often that he tells somebody, come on up here, let's talk, and then send you back. It's not often. A lot of times he say, come on up here and
Yeah, and
just
that's
stay
it.
here until it's
Yeah,
time to go back down into a different body.
right.
you
And
know,
try again.
exactly. Don't take anything for granted. I know it can be hard, but don't take anything for granted. It is not worth it. You're only here temporary. You want
I
to be
love that.
as long as you can for your family, for others. Yeah, and do our creator some certain. Don't do him a disservice by doing all this, crazy stuff. Make him proud. He's already proud, for the most part, but make him proud.
I love that. So let the people know where they can find you, where they can reach you. Of course, I have this information in my description and everything. That's so people can get in contact with you and get, some of this love and really get the idea.
It's endlessly. I got so much to give. I want Facebook, of course, and Instagram. Facebook is Nasi Uzael. Um, and it's funny with the original ones. I'm not done yet, Martin. But
Gotcha.
you can find me on Instagram as Mr. underscore Martin, I believe. And email me. I believe you have my email address, Mr. underscore Martin 216 at yahoo.com. I'm gonna say I'm pretty much an open book. I think that is it. I got short term memory,
Okay.
so I'll probably forget something.
Okay. Well, y'all also make sure y'all get his book as well. I'll have that link in the description as well. Make sure y'all get his
Oh,
book.
and wanted to throw this out there. I will be having my first speaking engagement
Okay.
in Chicago on August of this year at 4:30 Central Time. My first time speaking for IANS,
Okay.
International
Okay.
Association for New Deaf Studies. So if anybody want to come and hear me speak for my first speaking engagement for the first time and everything, By all means, it's in Oak Brook, Illinois.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Jay. I really, really appreciated this time and interviewing you. Your story is definitely an inspiration. And I know
Of
I'm
course.
inspired. The people are going to be inspired. Of course, you guys can make
All
sure it's
praises.
Vision Rebirth on all platforms. My name is E, and this is Vision Rebirth. And cut.
Nice.